gracious greetings, Thanksgiving family and guests. Welcome to another edition of Living Water for a Thirsty Thursday. Well, here we are at St. Stephen Missionary Baptist Church once again, and I am with what I would call our dream team. We have Brother Williams leading our multimedia ministry. We have Rev Francis II, who is our minister to children, youth, and young adults. And then we have, Armand Patrick, who is the director of our children, youth, and young adults. If you've been here for the last week, you know we've been talking about abortion. Sensitive subject here in our community. It is something obviously that has spiritual ramifications for believers. It has social impacts here, and of course, it has political ramifications in our country. Brother Patrick, why don't you give us some of your thoughts on abortion, if you would?
Yeah, I think something to consider is the fact that when these situations arise, there were actions and plans that happened before. And so realizing the consequences of your actions, I think, will play a major factor in how you move forward and how you're prepared moving forward. So if you are indulging in acts that would produce a child, you need to realize the actions that you're taking come with consequences, and a child is a byproduct of your actions. And so figuring out and realizing, even before you even get to that point where you're even considering what, is now a huge topic and has been a huge topic of abortion, knowing, are you in a place to even have a family to begin with? Ideally, you should be married. But obviously, as you just stated, there's so many situations where single people are just indulging in acts out of selfishness. And I think that's something we have to realize and understand is sex itself is supposed to be sacrificial. It's supposed to reflect that your love for that other individual, your care for that other individual, that ultimately should reflect Christ's love for us. He gave himself up for us. And so if that's not where your head's at, which it might be possible that that's not where these people's heads are, you find yourself in situations where it's like, well, I'm going to do what's best for me, when you just indulge in an act that requires two people. And so that's one thing to consider. And then the other thing I would say to consider is for those who have had abortions, I think as the church and as the body, I think we have to do a better job of loving those individuals post these actions and decisions that they've made. I think oftentimes, we see them outside, everywhere, picket signs everywhere. You're going to hell in a handbasket. You're condemned. There's nothing good happening for you. When we should be bringing them to Jesus. We should be trying to show them the compassion and love that Christ has for us when we're sinning and doing things that are just as wrong as killing a child. And so I think those are two things that we definitely got to make sure we're aware of, and particularly, speaking to the body, making sure we're looking at the three fingers that are pointing back at ourselves when we're pointing at somebody else and doing and indulging something that we think is wrong, and that ultimately God believes is wrong.
Outstanding, and definitely having compassion for those that are doing whatever they may be doing that's contrary to God's will. And then I know when I was growing up, they would say pro-choice. For the pro-choicers, they say, how many choices do you want, right? Like you're saying, the events that occur prior to needing the abortion, there were some choices being made to even be put in that position. So yeah, I'm not just pro-choice, we are pro-choices. Let's get Rev Francis. What are your thoughts, sir?
A more complex issue than people present it as sometimes. I think it's easy on one hand to say, it's right or it's wrong. And then you have, different layers, if you will, of what causes an individual to resort to that to that type of an activity when it affects the life of an unborn child. And people have their own reasons. And a lot of those reasons are, like Armand was saying, as a result of, two people doing what they do. Y'all know what they was doing. And then they end up, in a situation where someone, usually the woman, will make a decision that affects her body. And that's why I believe that a lot of men are left out of the conversation, is because the narrative, and whether you agree or disagree, that the man really has no say-so over the woman's body. And to your point earlier, that if these people are unmarried, what right does he really have to tell her to do this thing or the other thing if this ain't really your woman? Right. And so a lot of people will see it that way, especially a woman who's like, you can't tell me what to do with my body. This baby is a part of my body, whether it's a person or just a mass of cells or however an individual wants to look at it. It's, a woman's choice. It's a woman's prerogative to do with her body as she sees fit. And so that begs the question of whether or not this is a person, an individual person with a life outside of the mother, as or is this just like a lump of cells growing in her stomach somewhere, So when it comes to what a man has to say, often you'll hear the argument that a man has no say so in those types of things, and I believe that I can understand that sentiment when, again, if the statistic is that, this guy may just be some dude that she met at the club, and now he's like, yeah, you gonna have this baby. She's like, I don't even know you like that, bro. But, again, to your point, it's the byproduct of a situation that two people participated in. And so, that's my point, is that it's a complex situation. It's more than just, do you have the right, do you not have the right? What right does this? Because, again, two people were involved. So this man should have some say-so, because you definitely gonna be taking him to the courthouse when it's time to pay for them Pampers and them, them school bills, and buy them uniforms and all that kind of stuff. You're gonna want him to be involved in the child's life, usually to some extent. And so, should he have a choice in saying, I want to, have you, ma'am, in my life for the rest of the life of this child? Because it's not, a lot of people don't understand that it's not just, okay, when the baby gets out of diapers or at 18 it's over. As long as this person is alive, you're a parent. And even if that person leaves this world before you do, you're still a parent to this child. And so, like I said, it's look, I'm just here drinking some water and freestyle.
That's good stuff. Good stuff. We appreciate the inputs. That, like Rev Francis is saying, there's more to it than just having this abortion. There are so many other ramifications on the surface, and of course in the root. So, Zuri Williams, what are your thoughts, sir?
Well, I think Rev Francis took like the lane that I was going to go in, with it being a lot of factors involved. I'd say, especially if the two people aren't really married, it would definitely bring up the conversation of like what the situation is as far as like the relationship between them and like the right for the man to have a say so. Obviously, if they're married, then it's like a totally different thing, where I think that the man should have more of a say so in what the actual like decision is and stuff. I think, like you said, there's so many different factors that play a part into it. So it's all like a situational thing when it comes to that type of decision making, I think.
Asking yourself a question or a series of questions. And that question is, are you a person of value more than your Christianity if you're a believer? Meaning, what you want, what I want, is that what really carries more weight than my faith, right? That's where you start. Then another question could be, am I a female or a male before I'm a Christian? Am I male or female before I'm a Christian? See where I'm going with this? Then you can go, am I Asian? Am I Caucasian? Am I Latino, Hispanic before I'm Christian? Yeah, all those things we could look at as well. And so what it comes down to is our perspective, our worldview, and how it lines up with God's view. Because really what we're talking about is, do I do what I want or do I do what God wants? And that's really where we all end up at the end of the day. We can come up with a lot of situations and circumstances, but that's really where we're parked. So marinate through that. That's where we'll be next week. We thank the dream team here for all that they shared. Good stuff. These some sharp gentlemen. They definitely gave us some words to think on and to pray on. To continue to make God proud in all we say, think.